this video is going to be for anyone considering buying a Grizzly. I've put about 53 hours on this bike. I do not have any other experience with other Grizzlies, so this is really just a first user's impression. So I have a Raptor, and I knew the 700cc engine is very, very torquey. So the main reason I bought a Grizzly is because I have previous experience with Yamaha, and the 700cc engine is absolutely perfect. I know Grizzly went through a few bad years with Subaru, and I avoided Yamaha those years. But now that they're back to their old 686, this thing is probably one of the most legendary engines ever to go into a quad. It strikes the perfect balance of lots of low-end torque with like a lighter frame. Okay, it took about 500-600 kilometers before the engine broke in. Somewhere around the 35-hour mark, I noticed that the fuel economy started to improve. The power was a little deeper, I would say, stronger. Okay, I need to talk about the CVT transmission in this because it is something completely different than what I was used to in the past, or what I experienced. I found Can-Am's clutch engagement to be very grabby, and it led to not. So I have an update on the paint. Everyone's been curious to know how the paint holds up. Well, here's a good example. So I was carrying a Pelican case here. That was the trip to Christina Falls and afterwards. So it's rubbed, but it hasn't really rubbed off. Like, that is 100% my fault. But what it's not doing, it's not flaking off. When I wash the quad, I don't know if that is the beginning of flaking. So I am just very careful when I wash it, because it's these sharp edges. That's where, there you can see just a little tiny smidgen there. But for the rest of the bike, I know it's a bit dirty here. Like here, you can see the sticker is starting to wear off from my leg. But if we go look on the other side, see how that glitters in the sun? I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera. Yeah, but no complaints with the paint so far. I am careful when I wash it, but it's been really good. Okay, things on this quad that I didn't know until after I've gotten to know it. The metal racks. These metal racks are absolutely awesome. I find that I just, like, when I go to get on the quad, I grab it in the back here, and like my other hand is usually on here, and it's very handy. When you have buried your quad and you're stuck and you're climbing on the front of it, literally, to like pull your winch out, these metal racks are absolutely phenomenal. Getting rid of the steel cable and replacing it with a synthetic winch cable, this has got to be the first thing anybody does. I have used this about half a dozen times now, and it is night and day compared to a steel cable. It works so much better. And then having the soft shackle up here that you can just reach when you get stuck from up here, it is 10 times better than having to get into 2.5 feet of mud and fish out. Anyways, steel cable, bad. What other? Oh yeah, this here, the brakes. This is the rear brake. So often when I get on the quad, I push, and so here you can rear brake, front brake. And so when I push this, anyway, it's a hands-free way of stabilizing the quad while you shift it into whatever gear you want. I think the other thing that needs mentioning is the quality of the ride, the suspension. It is extremely good. I can't recommend this quad enough. Obviously I have not ridden every other quad out there, but the people that have, they recommend these Grizzlies. They absolutely fit the sweet spot. I think the 700cc, the torque in the mid-range and down low, it's not going to be beat. You'll notice when riding it, like you keep your throttle in the very same position, and even if the terrain goes like this, it's like the engine doesn't change. It doesn't have to work hard. It's very easy for it to overcome obstacles. And in low gear, four-wheel drive, yeah, it's like the secret level. Instrument cluster, the gauge cluster, there's lots of YouTube videos on all of this, but I think having like the engine temperature and being able to switch between hours and odometer and your trip select and all of this, super handy. I think the engine braking in conjunction with the throttle, like how it's the harmony of the engine and the transmission and the CVT all together is what makes this quad stand out. It does almost everything exceptionally well. Guys that are going to go deep mudding, that want to run assassinators, things like that, you're going to want more power. But it's like Honda. Like this, I honestly look at this as like a high-powered Honda. It has the same quality, the same fit and finish. Well, similar, I would say, but you know, like standing up on this, I find this just so perfect. Like I'm tall, I'm 6 feet tall, I've got longer arms, and I spend a lot of time driving standing up. It is absolutely perfect for that. Yep, the four-wheel disc brakes in combination with the engine braking, you are going to find that you are not going to have an issue with brakes. I'm really curious to see how the longevity of it holds up, but obviously, I'm not even at 1,000 kilometers, so I haven't had to change any brake pads yet, so I guess we'll see how it holds up. Okay, so the power steering and the four-wheel drive system on this, obviously it has such great reviews. It is phenomenal to use. I do not use diff lock very often, like maybe once. If you just go and put it in four-wheel, limited slip, higher low, and higher low gear, that is perfect for 99.9% of situations. And if you're stuck that deep that you need diff lock, odds are you're winching yourself out anyways. But as it is with the EPS system, like the power steering, four-wheel drive, putzing around tight trails, it is absolutely incredible. And that's the other thing, the nimbleness of this and how well it turns. I find it's perfect. Okay, diff lock, low 4x4, let's get out of this. Okay, so here, let's take top piece off so you can see under here. So I think this here is for the CVT. So we try to keep the water level below there. These are vent lines, and so there's the transmission. So that's the one thing about the Grizzly that I really like. With the marine connections, this thing is like built to go through water. Obviously you can get snorkel kits for it, but from the factory they've done an exceptionally good job. With the battery up here, I do want to replace this with a lithium battery just because of the weight. I did notice a difference when I pulled out some weight out the front. Weight matters, and especially when you compare it with a sport quad. 5, 10, 15 pounds, it adds up. Okay, lots of people have talked about storage already, but my 2 cents on it is that it's absolutely perfect. I do find I put my phone in here a lot. I have a microfiber cloth to stop things from bouncing around so much. The center compartment is absolutely perfect for gloves. There's a roll of toilet paper in there. And then in the back here, So extra ropes, winch, ooh, Gatorade. But the main thing that I carry is a saw. Like the number of times you come across a tree that is in the middle of a trail and you need to get by, little saw is super handy. Yeah, more to this back here. People complain that it's not watertight. I'm glad it's not watertight, because I think this is designed for where your recovery gear and straps and extra stuff go, and when it gets wet, you want it to breathe, and helps dry out your stuff. And yeah, I've got no complaints about it. Things that I want to stay dust free, I put in a Pelican case, or it goes up front in this. This here is pretty good, but I wouldn't put my phone in there. I think that this quad is, it will far exceed your expectations. There are always going to be special use cases where people want, you know, 100 horsepower to go ripping through mud, and then there's other people that want lighter quads that, you know, want to go more two-wheel drive. I'm extremely happy with this machine overall. I have taken it in places that I would not take other quads, and it has done better than I expected. The handling, the low center of gravity, the engine braking, the torque, the general aesthetics of it, the build quality, working on it. Overall, this is, I see now why this quad is so highly regarded and recommended. No, it's not the most powerful, it's not the most badass machine out there, but it very well could be like the best. My main takeaways after 53 hours on this quad is the smoothness of the transmission and how well it pairs up with the torque of the engine. I am extremely surprised, to say the least. I'm not a fan of CVT transmissions. I don't like how they engage. I don't like the grabbiness. I spent some time on some Outlanders and it just wasn't for me. Rode an Arctic Cat, same thing. I always felt that the transmission was the weak spot, and I understand the automatic feeling, but I'm just old school and liked gears. So I was taking a big risk on this. I hadn't spent any time riding a Grizzly or really gotten to know this type of transmission. However, at work years ago, we had Rhinos, and I absolutely loved those. Very reliable. I preferred the suspension on the Commanders, but the extra power in the Commander was not worth the overheating. Like, I spend the majority of my time on this going 30 kilometers an hour or less. So the torque on this with that single cylinder down low is just perfect. And especially when you put this in low gear, I think that's one of my biggest surprises with this quad. In low gear, four-wheel drive, it is epic. It's actually surprisingly fast. It is super fun. You can stop faster without the CVT spooling. I find the center of gravity on the quad, like with the fuel tank down here, it is exceptionally good. The first thing I noticed about this quad when riding it was that it was heavy, but like all utility quads are heavy, and I'm comparing this to Raptors and Hondas, like the TRXs. So of course anything would feel heavy compared to those. This is on the lighter side of the utility quad, so I couldn't imagine riding like 1,000-pound quad. I feel that you lose the cornering, the braking, like, anyways. However, with this quad, I actually find it very fun to drive. The power is just perfect. So, I have an exhaust on it. The exhaust that comes on these, like, could be plugged with a hot dog. I don't like quiet. I also don't like the sound of CVTs. That was my other main point. The whining always bugged me, and that's what kept me away. This is no better, so I fixed that by putting on an exhaust pipe. And in doing that, you have to richen your air fuel ratio a little bit. You can put in power commanders or HMF has their own. I asked the dealership about doing it, and they said they can do it themselves. And all that I know is that they richened it up 2 or 3 points. Whatever that means to people that know more about the tuning of this, that's all the info I have. Now, the drawback of richening this up too much is that you can get popping on the exhaust when you decelerate. I can tell that how they've richened this up, it's on the bottom end. Like, you could go a little bit richer, and like the reason I'm saying that is the popping that I get on this versus my Raptor. My Raptor's tuned a little more aggressively. I have AIS block off plates that I haven't put on yet, so I'll do a separate video on those. It hasn't been a noticeable enough issue on the Grizzly that I haven't done it yet, but minor detail. Anyway, tuning your quad, these 700 cc's, they come from the factory, they run lean. Like, the engines are just hot. And I noticed that with my Raptor. When I got it, it had exhaust on it, but it was not tuned. And the header pipe on it was so hot that you could barely keep your foot next to it. As soon as I put in a power commander, richened it, temperature dropped, power went up. So I'm a big advocate of doing that to these 700 cc's. I've had 0 hiccups, problems, issues on the 700 cc. I find the torque, the power band is absolutely phenomenal. Instead of me making longer videos just saying, oh yeah, it's great, I've tried to make other videos like showing you the stuff that I've gone through, and that's like the best way to do it. But to add to that, the package, the overall package with this Grizzly is what makes it good. Like, the combination of the larger wheels, like that 14-inch wheel, 27-inch tire. These are factory Zillas. These are awesome. I can't say enough good about them. I feel that because of how heavy these utility quads are, going to like more of a, you know, a less aggressive light mud tire, I don't know if you really gain that much performance. I honestly find, like, ripping around on these, the biggest downfall to this is the weight, and there's nothing you can do about that. So I also find in high gear, if you try to brake hard on this, the clutch is still spooling. It's not meant for ripping around on. There's other sport utilities that are absolutely meant for bagging on it. I put this more in the adventure category that can do anything. I seriously think this is perfect for 95% of people 95% of the time.